welcome back to my channel. It's Gina Tell. Today we are going to talk about some long arm quilting, and I'm doing a project today for the Fat Quarter Shop, and oftentimes when I do things for them, it takes me a while to actually be able to show it. I often do the work and then they don't release those patterns for months, sometimes several months. So we're going to work on a pattern today, and then I will release this video when the pattern comes out. So you're kind of getting a sneak peek, but not really. Okay, so anyway, we are going to work on a project that is, one of them is going to be, so it's the same pattern, and one of them is going to be a table topper and the other one's going to be a pillow. So we're going to start on the table topper, and we're going to do overlapping crop circles is the pantograph that we're working on. So I'm going to turn on my long arm. Last night before I went to bed, I went ahead and loaded the quilt. And I also, I don't think I pushed the button hard enough. So I loaded the quilt last night before I went to bed, and I programmed the pantograph. I got everything all lined up. So today we're going to turn it on, and I'm going to put it on a time lapse so you can watch it stitch out and it doesn't take 100 years. And then after the quilting is done, then I will show you the binding, and I'll do some hand binding on this small project. And then we will also work on the pillow later on in the video. So, and maybe in a different video, it might make it too long, but either way, that's what we're gonna do today. So get ready to watch some stitching. Okay, so this pattern is called the Wood Lily Table Topper. There's also a Wood Lily quilt that I've already quilted, and we use the overlapping crop circles like I mentioned before. And so we're going to do the same thing, only in a slightly smaller version on this one. It's 25 by 25, and I have it basted already with 80/20 batting and the backing that's on there. And so I've already basted it, and I put the design on there. I figured out how big I wanted it and did all that last night, and then I turned off the machine and went to bed. So now this is what we're going to do to restart it and get your stuff lined up. So I'm going to change the camera angle. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to turn on our Prostitcher, and I use a Handi Quilter Forte, and so this is the Prostitcher. And so what we're going to do, if you're going to open up a file that you saved last night and you're reopening it, you open your Prostitcher, and then you go to Workspace. And so the last one that I saved is going to be the first one on the list, and so that's that one, and it's going to pull it up. However, it's not going to be in the right spot because there's your start point, and if I went to that, it would take me way over there. So that's not where we want it. And so the first thing that we have to do once we pull up the design is hit baseline. We've talked about that a little bit in other videos. It's kind of just like a save. It's not really save, but it kind of just locks things in. So it's important to hit that baseline first. And now we are going to go, normally you would go to Prostitcher. Like for instance, if your design messed up and you had to restart and you were down on the bottom, what you would do right now is you'd go to Prostitcher, and then you'd tab down to the spot that you want to start. And then you would do what we're getting ready to do. But since we haven't started it yet, we're going to start on the first point, and that's where the little green X is. So we don't have to change that part. All we have to do is go to modify, and then we have to go to reposition. And what we have to do is we're gonna look. So right now my needle is way over here, and I want my needle to be way over there. And I used a friction pen, and I marked last night where I want my start point to be. So you can't really see it, but I'm pointing to it. That's where the start point that we want it to be. So we're gonna go over there, and we're gonna needle down. And that's where we want our start point to be. So the start point button is right there. So we're going to hit start point. And then it's going to move that design. So now it's kind of way over there and we don't really see it. And so we're going to move over here. And then we're going to move right there. And then we're going to hit the magnifying glass, the plus, just a little bit so we can see it. So now it has the start point on the screen matching the start point down here on the quilt. So we can pull the needle up, and now what we want to do if you're doing this is you just want to make sure that your design, I always overlap my design by maybe an inch or so, inch and a half sometimes, so that when I do my trimming, I get the whole entire design. Some designs, you'll see like spaces, and I don't like to see any spaces, so I always overlap a little bit. Okay, so that means that, okay, so now right there where that little green dot is, so we can go to the Prostitcher, and we can go to the new start and end, and we can scroll down, and now we can see that's where the second point would start, which is right here where I have the needle. So that's fine in terms of overlapping, and when they're small like this, you don't really need to overlap all that much. Sometimes not really at all. And so if you want to tweak it a little bit, I'm going to show you, if your design isn't really where you want it to be, I'm going to move it forward here so you can see. So let's say your design, the top part of your design, isn't matching up exactly with the top part of your quilt, and you want to move it a little bit up or down. So if you go to reposition up here, right here, and then down on the bottom right, there's these little nudge arrows. You can nudge your design down just a hair. And so mine was up just a little bit more than I like it. I don't like to use too much extra on the top because it's not really necessary. I usually do a little bit of overlapping or extra on the bottom because I want to make sure that I have enough to cover the bottom. And so I'm going to move out of the camera range for just a second and see how far it is over here. And then I'm just using the little nudge like I showed you. So I check all the corners to make sure that it's lined up how I want it. And it is. Now it's good. So I'm going to hit baseline. And then now I'm at the Prostitcher at the beginning. And so I am ready to hit start. So I'm going to... The camera is kind of in my way, and so I'm pretty sure you're going to see my whole head if I do this. I'm going to move you over just a little bit. And then I'm going to move you down. Okay. So now I think what we will do is, I've got it pulled up. I already checked last night to make sure I had plenty of bobbin thread, and I changed the needle already, so I'm good with that. So I just pull up my bobbin thread from there, and then I'm going to hit run. We want to make sure that your needle is not down, and then we can hit run. So as many of you know, Kimberly likes her quilting very dense and small, so I have it scaled down so that the areas around the stitching is really small. So it's 10 o'clock right now. We'll see how long it takes to stitch out. And I'm going to put it on time lapse, and then we will check back when it's all finished. Okay, so we've been watching our time lapse, and this is what we have accomplished. We're about halfway finished, and it looks really good. So these, there's my fingernail. They're pretty small. They're really small. Okay, so when I advance my quilt, I use the drag and drop. And what I do is I go to the highest point so that we make sure that you get to get all the stitches in there. So I go to the highest point from the last row, put my needle down, and then I do look at my screen to make sure that if I put my crosshairs right there to make sure that my next row is all underneath that line so that I don't chop anything off. So there's that green start point right there is where I'm going to start next. And so I want to make sure that that entire area is going to be covered. So that line being up above it just a little bit is perfect. Okay, so I have already put my needle down. I'm going to hit the drag button. And when the drag button is pushed, it turns into the drop button. So at that point, I am going to take my clamps off. And then I'm going to check one more time before I walk to the end and make sure that that button was pressed. It's just one of those silly things I do. And then I'm going to walk to the end and I'm going to advance the quilt so you can watch it advance. And if my batting gets folded or messed up, I will fix it because that will make, it will add extra in there that we don't necessarily want, extra bulk in there. So that piece was folded and so I just fixed it and now I'm going to go back. And I'm going to advance it until my little bars are touching the back. And my little clamp didn't get down all the way. And then I just pull it just a little bit on the front so that I can hear the snap and I can feel kind of the tension that I like. And then I'm going to clamp the sides again. And then I'm going to hit the drop button. And so now it's not green anymore. Now it says drag again for next time. And then I'm going to needle up. And I'm going to go through. I'm going to hit the Prostitcher button and then the baste button. So I'm going to go through and baste it around the edge. And since it's small, I don't really have to flatten it or anything, like get it situated. When it's a big quilt, you have to kind of get it all. But this one, since it's small, you don't really have to do much. And it's been seriously starched, so it's very heavy feeling. I am not a starcher. I don't starch my fabric, nor have I ever. So, but I do see a lot of starched fabric. Okay, so we've basted it all the way around. And now we're going to go through and make sure that our design down here on the quilt matches our design up here on the screen. And that will make sure that everything lines up when we do it. So I'm going to hit the magnifying glass, the plus one, and magnify it. And I'm going to bring you back over here so you can see. Okay, so once we hit the drag and drop, what we're trying to accomplish by doing this and zooming in is just to make sure that the bottom section of that last row is lining up with the needle. And so there's a little laser on mine, on this machine, and it's pointing down at the exact point that we want it, and it's matching up here. So that just means that what the computer thinks and what my actual quilt is positioned, that those are both the same. And so that will make sure that this next row is seamless and you won't be able to tell where the two rows started and stopped. Okay, so I am going to check the other side now. And make sure, and I just kind of get on my tippy toes sometimes too, and it all looks perfect. And so what I'm doing is I start on the right side and I go over to the left side and I just check several points to make sure that they are lining up. And if they're not, you just want to adjust it. Sometimes you can pull it, you can roll your quilt one more time if it's way too loose, or sometimes you can push it just a little bit on the back. And we're talking like millimeters sometimes, not very big areas. And so sometimes it's just a matter of pushing that a little bit or you can tuck a little something in there. I know that Handi Quilter shows that you can tuck a little bit of paper towel or extra batting in if you have a really big gap. You shouldn't normally have that kind of a huge gap, but if you do, that's one of the things that they suggest. Okay, so I think we're ready to go. We're gonna go up here and go to our green dot and pull up our bobbin thread. And then we're gonna get off base. Sometimes I've done that, I've hit it and it starts basting, it's all crazy. Okay, and so then we're gonna go to new start and end point, and we're gonna arrow down, and that takes us to the next row that we wanna be on. Make sure our needle is up, and it is, and we're gonna hit resume. And then sometimes I stand here frantically, making sure that it lines up. Because I'm a weirdo. I just really want your quilts to look great. So I take a lot of pride in my work, and I oftentimes spend more time worrying than I need to. So it lined up really good up there. It looks fine. Okay, y'all, we're finished. It looks so pretty. I love it. All right, so now we're going to unload it, and I'm going to show you how to